Good morning. All right, never forgive again. So as above, so below. Be in this world, but not of this world. This month, we're exploring joining heavenly ideas, higher truths, deep and profound spiritual concepts, that's the as above, not of this world part, with our earthly, worldly experiences, that's the so below, being in this world part. So that the earthly, worldly experiences with all of the dust and the debris and the grit and the grime can come with these experiences and are transmuted into heavenly ones. And as I said, we're talking today about never forgive again. And that's kind of a provocative title, don't you think?
Got my attention.
Got your attention. Never forgive again. I'm sure it piques some of your interest, and you may really like it because I know how some of you may feel. Don't be talking to me about forgiveness. There's just some things out there that are unforgivable, right? In fact, for some of us, forgive is that other kind of four-letter word. It can be like that. So the idea of not having to forgive could be very appealing, but I'm afraid to tell you that you're not off the hook this morning. Sorry, that was just to grab you in there. Because what we know, and we really do know this at a very deep, deep heart within our being, and that is we've come here to be the fullness of God in physical manifestation, which we do. And if we believe that we're here because God has incarnated within you and me, which we do, then if we want to have a snowball's chance and you know what, which we left that place a couple of weeks ago, to actually live from that place of spirit within, then anger and hurt and resentment and blame, etc., all of those things that go on the opposite side of forgiving, they cannot live within us if we want to experience all of the things that we came here to experience, because it's just not possible. Just like it's not possible to look out the front window and the back window of the house at the same time. You can't be facing in one direction unless you're like some mothers who happen to have eyes in the back of their heads, right?
Well, that's why all the hair falls out after you give birth, because then your eyes have a place to grow in.
Well, there you go. Okay, I knew there was something with that. And we can't travel north and south at the same time, right? It's two opposite directions. And we can't walk up a ladder and down a ladder at the same time. And we cannot be an expression of love and carry anger and hurt and resentment and blame in our hearts at the same time. You can't feel two different things at one time. When you're feeling love, you can't feel those other things. When you're feeling anger and resentment and fear, you can't feel the love. There's just no room for all of it at the same time. And we really do know that, don't we? We've all experienced that. So I want you to know what I want to know is, are you willing to open your minds today and your hearts this morning as a new and above perspective of forgiveness is introduced? Are you ready to do that? Are you willing to do this? This is kind of a new perspective, okay? You're not so sure. I don't have Doug on this one, but just stay with me. Stay with me on this. Are you willing to see beyond what the human eye can see? We're going to take a little step into spirit here. And really what I'm asking, are you willing this morning to join together heaven and earth today in a very deep and profound way? That's what I want to know. Is everybody ready to at least take that step? Okay, good. All right. Because today we're going to explore a very powerful practice that, when applied in a regular and consistent way in this earthly experience, may take you to the heavenly place of never needing to forgive again. Okay, so it's kind of an interesting concept. And I'm going to say a qualifier there, at least forgive in the traditional sense, and even what I'm going to call the spiritual sense. And I'm going to define both of those in a few more moments. But the practice that I'm going to talk about today is called radical forgiveness. And it's based on a book by Colin Tipping. And I've been getting his emails now for about 6 months. And this book is just amazing. And it's actually called Radical Forgiveness. If anyone's interested, we can order and have that book if you're interested in reading more about it. So what is radical forgiveness? Well, in a nutshell, he says everything Everything occurs in our lives, everything, capital letters, so that we might have an opportunity to awaken to our spiritual truth and live from our divine nature. And when we look at it from that perspective, there really is nothing to forgive. So if everything that's happening in our lives is for a spiritual reason, it's an interesting concept. So this is actually another way of saying everything happens for a reason, and that reason is always there to support me. Always there to support me. Or in the book, Your Aladdin's Lamp, and this is by Bill Hornaday, which Rich and I absolutely loved. We would listen to him every morning from 7 to 7:15 on AM radio in Whittier. And this book was about the early days of religious science. And he wrote, nothing but good is going on when we have the courage to accept it as a basic idea. So that's kind of an interesting concept. Everything that you see, nothing but good is going on. That's a challenge sometimes. But he's saying the same thing. Hornaday is saying the exact same thing as Colin. And so what they're saying is radical forgiveness is designed to break the chains of victimhood and to move us into a place of personal empowerment. So we're moving from victimhood, from being a victim, to being personally empowered. In the introduction to Radical Forgiveness, Tipping writes, my main intention in writing this book was to make clear the distinction between forgiveness that maintains a victim archetype and a viewpoint that frees us from it. Radical forgiveness changes us to fundamentally shift our perception of the world and our interpretation of what happens to us so that we can stop being victims. I recognize that the ideas presented here may be extremely challenging for someone who has been severely victimized and is still carrying a lot of pain. I ask only that you read this book with an open mind and see whether or not you feel better after reading it. So he's kind of putting it out there that, yeah, he understands that sometimes there's been some horrific things that have a lot of pain attached to them. He's just asking to give it a little bit of a chance. So this morning, I only ask that you be with me for the next few moments with an open mind and a heart and see what happens for you as we explore this. I'm going to talk a little bit about the ideas behind radical forgiveness to give you some groundwork, but really, talk is kind of cheap, right? I mean, I can say all kinds of things, but unless you experience, it's really the act of shifting our perspective that is going to bring about any healing that we may be seeking. And I want to begin by giving you 4 important assumptions behind the concept of radical forgiveness. And the first is exactly in line with our monthly theme, which is, vibrationally, we live in 2 worlds simultaneously, the world of divine truth or spirit and the world of humanity, as Colin Tipping refers to it. He suggests that once we awaken, we can live comfortably in both. You've heard about that, one foot in the spiritual, 1 foot on the earthly plane. Second, life is not random. It provides for the purposeful unfoldment of our own divine plan, with opportunities to make our choices and decisions in every moment, guided by our higher self. Remember, last week we talked about the higher self with a capital S versus our self with a smaller s. Explore for a moment what is meant by our own divine plan. Let's look at that. What do we mean by that? Some preordained set of conditions, like we have a plan that's just going to fall out, it's fate or whatever. I don't believe that, not for a second. Our own divine plan is for us to awaken to our own divinity. That is what our divine plan is. Holmes writes in The Science of Mind, until we awake to the fact that we are one in nature with God, we shall not find the way of life. Until we awaken to the fact that we're one. And this is not just a new thought teaching. According to Rabbi David Copper, he wrote a book called God is a Verb, one of the primary texts in the Kabbalah that cries out to humankind saying, you beings on earth who are in deep slumber, awaken. It pleads with us, stop sleeping, wake up. What are you waiting for? So your divine plan, my divine plan, our divine plan is to wake up. And that awakening unfolds uniquely for each and every one of us, and in our own timeline. Third, at the soul level, we get precisely what we need in our lives to support that awakening. How we judge and what we get determines whether we experience life as painful, often the earthly experience, or joyful, the heavenly experience. And fourth, through the law of resonance, which is another term for the law of attraction, we attract people who resonate with our issues so that we can heal them and return to wholeness. For example, if abandonment is our issue, we will tend to attract people who abandon us. In that sense, these people serve as our teachers. So let me say those briefly again so that we're really on the same page with our assumptions. Number one, vibrationally, we live in heaven and earth simultaneously, and we can learn to live in both. Number two, we are each on a path to awaken to our own divinity. Number three, everything in our experience is in support of that awakening. Number four, we attract into our lives people and conditions that resonate with the areas in our lives where we are currently asleep, giving us an opportunity to awaken. And of course, whether we do that is totally and completely up to each of us. Okay, do these feel like spiritually grounded assumptions that are in alignment with Science of Mind teachings? You feel that? Okay, they do to me. They really do. So how is radical forgiveness different from traditional forgiveness? Or as I put it a moment ago, spiritual forgiveness? Well, traditional forgiveness is, you're a complete jerk, but I forgive you. That's traditional forgiveness. Spiritual forgiveness is, you're a complete jerk, but I forgive you because I know that if I don't, I block the flow of God through and as me. So I must forgive you in order to be spiritually connected. All right? But you're still wrong and you're still a jerk. That's spiritual forgiveness. Radical forgiveness is, wow, maybe you're not a jerk at all. In fact, I realize that my soul called you into my experience so that I could awaken more fully to my divinity. Wow. In terms of our capacity to evolve spiritually, radical forgiveness offers extraordinary potential to transform consciousness, and this potential far exceeds what is possible with the traditional forgiveness, or even what is being called spiritual forgiveness. I completely get, however, that we still live in a world of humanity, and at certain times we simply will not be able to see a situation from that perspective. It's just too much, too hard. When we find ourselves immersed in deep pain over a situation, it is virtually impossible for us to move into radical forgiveness. When we have recently experienced harm at the hand of another, we can't begin to wrap our minds around the idea that it is part of the unfolding of a divine plan, and it is cruel and cold to suggest that to someone in the midst, you can't suggest that to someone who's in the midst of that kind of pain. But now, here's a deep and profound spiritual truth. If we stay enmeshed in our wounds, we remain a victim all our lives, and the awakening won't happen. So if we want to awaken, there must come a point where we expand our thinking to consider the possibility that perhaps, just perhaps, the circumstance came into our lives to support us, and that our awakening is, in fact, contained in the situation. There's a ritual in the Navajo tradition to prevent people from staying enmeshed in their wounds, to help them move past their areas of pain. And while recognizing the need for the people to speak about their hurt and to have them witnessed by the group, they understood that speaking too much, continually talking about their wounds, gave their wounds power. Therefore, if a person had a wound or a grievance to share, the tribe would meet and the person would be brought into the center of the circle. This person was allowed to come in and out of the circle 3 times to air his grievance, and everyone listened with empathy and compassion. On the 4th occasion, however, as the person came into the circle, everyone would turn their backs, and they would say, "Enough. We have heard you express your concern 3 times. We have received it, now let it go. We will not hear it again." And that was their way that they did this. I think 3 times telling a story is a good number, don't you think? How many of you have told your story that you've carried? I know at a Selomar, there was a speaker who talked about this. He says, how many of you came with issues you want to resolve? He says, you brought them in with you like bags of luggage, right? You brought these issues that you wanted to work on while you're here this week. He says, well, I invite you to bring those bags with you to a Selomar. Check in. Lay those bags down. But when you check out at the end of the week, don't take them with you. Don't be raised up into as we said when we were at Silmar, we were walking on clouds. Don't be in this area where you feel so connected and one. And then on your way out, grab all those bags to take with you, because that just defeated the whole purpose of the entire week. So he says, put those bags down and leave them, and leave without them. So when you've done that, when you have released your story, here's a 4-step process, a spiritual technology really, to help you move to the place where no forgiveness is really necessary. You can use this really anytime you find yourself getting upset over something, or even find you're making judgments. And we've been talking about judgments a lot, especially with Brene Brown, and realizing that the judgments we have of ourselves are the ones that give us the power or help us judge others. And we realize when we stop judging ourselves, we stop judging others. This was kind of a huge aha that we had in our book group. We stopped judging ourselves as much, and then all of a sudden we really weren't focused on anyone else because we weren't so critical of ourselves. It was really a big aha. But this is a great process. This process will bring your consciousness back into alignment with the principles of radical forgiveness. Now, before I give you the 4 steps, I invite you to think of a situation that is not resolved in your heart. Think of a situation that is not resolved in your heart. Somewhere you're carrying some hurt or resentment or anger, someone or a situation that cannot walk through your mind unharmed. That's how we know that we've totally forgiven, is when we can think about a person and they can get all the way through our mind without our harming them in some way. That's how we know when we're completely healed of that situation. So, does everybody have something that they want to work on? Okay. Now let's apply these 4 steps. Step 1, you're going to look at what it is you're thinking about and say, look at what I created. Wow, look at what I created. This first step reminds us that we are the creators of our reality. However, it's imperative to remember that we create circumstances for our own awakening, so do not assume guilt for anything that happens. There's no guilt involved. It's all part of our awakening. So don't judge. Being quick to judge, we often use this step as a way to beat ourselves up. Look what I created. Oh my God, what an idiot. No, don't go there. Just look how powerful I am to create this, and keep it as a witness perspective, no judgment. And because when we do that, we say things like, I created this. I must be terrible. I must be a terrible person. What a terrible metaphysician I am. Gee, and I thought I was on the right path, right? I must be out of alignment. We really put a lot of judgment on this. Don't fall into this trap. And please, don't ever say it to someone else. I mean, when you were talking about the story, what's in your pocket, I've actually had discussions with practitioners sharing something, and their comment has been, what's in your consciousness to create that? Don't say that to anybody else. We're all on our own path of awakening. So kind of goes along with that credit card, what's in your pocket? Yeah, what's in your consciousness? No, there's no judgment either to yourself or anyone else. We keep that out of there. That just comes across as being very uncaring and not compassionate. So yes, it's true. You created the situation, and your soul brought it into your experience so that you might have an awakening, not so you can beat yourself up. So step 2, notice your judgments and love yourselves for having them. Love yourself for having them. Wow. If you notice that you're judging something, just go, wow, and just surround yourself with, with love. This step acknowledges that while we are, when we are being in this world, we automatically attach a whole string of judgments, interpretations, and beliefs to our situations. It's just natural. We do. But love yourself for that. Our tasks involve accepting these aspects of our own humanity and loving ourselves for having these judgments, including the one that says we must be a spiritually bereft person for creating this reality. Our judgments are part of ourselves, so we must love them as we love ourselves. We took vows last week. Remember those vows that we weren't going to judge? Doing this connects us with what is actually happening. We also sang the song, I love myself so much. These are so important. Doing this connects us with what is actually happening in our body and mind, and brings us into the present through our feelings. Our energy then quickly shifts and allows us to go into the third and fourth steps of this process. So step number 3, I am willing to see something bigger going on than just the surface situation. We're opening up our minds. We're willing to see something bigger, a bigger picture. It's perfectly natural to think that everything out there is all there is to reality, but maybe there's a whole lot more going on that's happening beneath or above or surrounding the reality that we see out there. Remember, what is out there is an effect. The cause is all behind that in our consciousness. We cannot make our judgments, our decisions based on what we see out there. We must come from cause. We must stay in that present mindset where we know we are truly abundant children of God and that all is already given. We're just not seeing it yet. And then we do, because that's the way the process works. Thought first, belief first, effect second. So we don't perceive anything else going on because our 5 senses are inadequate to the task. This is where we have to have that faith and that spiritual belief, and that we have to really get that spiritual muscle in tone. But because we know just because we don't see it doesn't mean that it's not occurring. When you can get into that vibrational feeling of something happening, because you know it's already happening, even though you're not seeing. That's the believing is seeing. Not seeing is believing. And it's the more excited you can get, because you know it is, the more excited you know that boat is already in the slip, not just a picture on your refrigerator, the quicker it is into manifestation. It's a truly powerful tool that we can use. So step 3 says that I am willing to explore the possibility that beneath all the drama, somewhere, something of a more spiritual nature is happening. Same people and same events, but a totally different meaning. I'm willing to entertain the notion that this dance going on right now is about my awakening. I'm willing to consider that it might be an opportunity to heal and to grow. That would make it a very different interpretation, wouldn't it? Being willing to explore these expanded possibilities is what radical forgiveness is all about. Its purpose lies in seeing the truth behind the apparent circumstances of a situation and recognizing the love that always exists there. You need not even fully understand what's going on or why. You don't have to know why. You really don't. Just be willing to entertain the idea that something else is going on and that this is a giant step forward. In fact, the willingness to see the situation differently is the key. This willingness to take a broader view is the essential step in radical forgiveness and in the entire process associated with radical forgiveness. It equates to a prayerful surrendering in the moment to the surrendering, It equates to a prayerful surrendering in the moment to the divine plan. Tipping says that 90% of the healing occurs when we become willing to let in the idea of our soul that our soul has lovingly created this situation for us. 90% of the healing. Well, just to entertain that idea that our soul has created that for us. In becoming willing, we let go of control and we surrender to God, and God takes care of the other 10%. If you can really understand at a deep level and surrender to the idea that God will handle this for you if you turn it over, you won't really need to do anything at all. The situation in your healing will both get handled automatically. Step number 4, I choose the power of peace. This fourth step represents a consequence of all the previous steps. By accepting that divine purpose is served in a situation and that what appears to be occurring may be illusionary, an illusion, there we go. We choose to feel peace and to use the power of peace in whatever actions are required of us. The power of peace is found when we are fully present in the moment, acting with clarity and focus to do whatever that may be required, and being completely aware of our feelings. We're going to go through that 4-step process again, using whatever issue you thought of before, whatever came to you, only with less talk from me and more introspection from you. So, step number 1, look what I created. Look what I created. Step 2, notice your judgments around it and accept and love yourself for having them. Step 3, be willing to see something bigger going on than just the surface situation. Step 4, make a choice in this moment for peace. Do we have all that? Gone through that? Okay, I kind of went through this a little fast. So this morning we have taken a higher view of this idea of forgiveness, realizing that the highest viewpoint there is the place to where there is no need for forgiveness. There's no need to forgive. This morning we have all stood on higher ground together. And even if we can't stay there all the time, at this point in our spiritual evolution, at least we know it's there. At least we know we can get there. We can go there. Because once we've been to the mountaintop, we can't go as far down in the valley as we've been before. It's not possible. So that's a good thing to rejoice in, isn't it? Because when we know that we can be up here, who wants to be all the way back here? We don't want to do that. So, I wish you peace and joy, and so it is.